Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Payoff Pitch. My name is Joey Olberding, and I will be your host for all things sports. So on this Thursday, July 12th, 2018, I want to talk about the NBA free agency, and more specifically, all the moves that have gone on so far, and how I think that the teams that have been affected by those deals are going to do later, and how those acquisitions in general are good for the teams, or maybe how they aren't so good, and what those teams need to do in the future to be able to ensure that they'll be a better team than they would be otherwise if they didn't re-sign these people. So, of course, the big story in free agency, as everybody knows, is that LeBron James, former Cleveland Cavalier, signed with the Los Angeles Lakers this offseason, and he brought along a few friends. Rajon Rondo, point guard from the Pelicans, actually used to play for the Celtics around the time where the Celtics and the Cavaliers were really fighting in the East over dominance. Lance Stevenson from Indiana. And if you have seen any footage of LeBron James and Lance Stevenson on the same basketball court, well, it's easy to make a joke out of. And JaVale McGee from Golden State, who's alright. He's not great. He's not even that good. He's a bit old, he's an okay enough center. And the likely starting five, adding LeBron James and adding all these other players for the Lakers, would be Lonzo Ball. Of course, LeVar Ball, his father, is a very famous person for being a very loud person, he has very strong opinions on a lot of facts, and say what you will about him, but his son is going to be the point guard. And he's averaging 10.2 points a game, 7.2 assists, and 6.9 rebounds. So a pretty solid line, quite honestly. And of course, LeBron James. I think he will be the shooting guard. And usually I'd like to put him at small forward or power forward, but LeBron James kind of needs to fill a role as more of a guard if he wants to really fit in with this team and be able to play with people like Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma, who are the really good players on the team that will be sticking around for a while. LeBron James, of course, 27.5 points, 9.1 assists, 8.6 rebounds. That's just a great stat line, and it'll be interesting if what I say holds true, how he will be able to do at the guard position. Then we have two players who I think are really underrated, in Brandon Ingram at small forward and Kyle Kuzma at power forward. Both of them average 16.1 points per game, 3.9 assists for Brandon Ingram and 1.8 assists for Kyle Kuzma, and 5.3 rebounds for Brandon Ingram and 6.3 rebounds for Kyle Kuzma. And then JaVale McGee, just by the stats alone, he's definitely not on the league of the other players, especially LeBron James. 4.8 points a game is 0.5 assists and 2.6 rebounds. That rebound amount is abysmal for somebody who's supposed to be a starting center. But the fact of the matter is the Lakers don't really have anybody else. So even though they did sign LeBron James, I think that I would have to give the Lakers more of a C+ rating. Because it's a really different team than the Lakers had before. They're going to get rid of a lot of guys. They're not going to re-sign Isaiah Thomas, for instance, because Isaiah Thomas hates LeBron James most likely because he got Isaiah traded to the Lakers in the first place. I think that they need a really solid starting center, so I think they should probably go after somebody like, Clint Capella, former Rocket, and maybe not a Rocket anymore. But we'll have to see come the rest of free agency. But it's a pretty alright team all around. I didn't really predict them winning anything against the Warriors. I think they can be a 4 seed at best. It's just because the Western Conference is so tough, and we'll get into that a little later. But since there's no superstar talent backing up LeBron like it's been every other team he's had, except for the old Cavaliers back in 2008 and 2009, usually you'd have somebody like D. Wade or Kyrie Irving or even Kevin Love to back him up, but in this scenario, he doesn't really. The closest player to really being a solid backup hasn't even signed with the Lakers, and who knows who that is, because that's something that the Lakers have been looking at, but nobody really wants to join LeBron, surprisingly, except for Lance Stevenson, Rajon Rondo, and JaVale McGee. So I think that, other teams have Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, James Harden, Chris Paul, uh, Westbrook, and Paul George. I mean, those are like solid. That's tough to guard. But when you only have one superstar, and granted, he's the greatest in the world, he's the best basketball player out there currently, and that's not really something one can really argue about. But the thing is, there's nobody backing him up, and that'll just be easier to guard because the more and more LeBron plays, the more and more film there is of him, and the less and less defenses have to really fear him, even though they will fear him, but they know what he's going to do. It's just, will he be able to do it? And that'll be interesting to see in a Lakers uniform, because it's really not easy to tell so far. Now, the Warriors, they made one really big free agent signing, and probably the only one they're really going to do, which was getting DeMarcus Cousins from the New Orleans Pelicans, who is a multi-time All-Star and is a very, very good player. And they only signed him for 1 year and $5.9 million. And I know what you're saying. How do you sign a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, multi-time All-Star, who's still young, for 1 year and $5 million, even though he was an All-Star just last year? Well, he had a bad Achilles injury, and he's going to be out for the majority of the season, most likely, for the Warriors. But the thing is, DeMarcus Cousins wasn't getting any help from any other team, so he went to the Warriors, and the Warriors like, okay, another All-Star at center, where we just lost our starting center in JaVale McGee, though he wasn't doing much. We'll take that, no doubt. We can get Jordan Bell at center for that time, and just look at the starting five. Once DeMarcus gets back, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, DeMarcus Cousins. 4 of those guys average over 20 points a game. That being Steph Curry, 26.4, Klay Thompson, exactly 20 points, KD, 26.4, much exactly like Steph Curry, and DeMarcus Cousins now, 25.2. And all of them, except for Klay Thompson, average more than 5 assists per game. And all of them, except for Klay Thompson, again, average more than 5 rebounds a game. So this is going to be a scary team, and this is just an A+, because, you signed an All-Star just last year. That's just perfect. If you want to be a team that really dominates everything for the next, who knows how long. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. We'll see how these rookies do, these young players for the Warriors do, but, it's just amazing. Even if DeMarcus Cousins doesn't work out at all because of that Achilles injury, they still are so solid. You're only wasting, $5 million on this All-Star. $5 million is nothing in the NBA. Absolutely nothing when compared to some of the other deals you have. The Trailblazers just signed Jusuf Nurkic for 4 years and $48 million, and that was a steal. They stole him. He was so good. He's a solid center who will be their center of the future, no doubt. But they just signed him for only $12 million a year. And Clint Capella over here, who's a free agent, is turning down offers for 5 years and $17 million a year. It's just amazing, the NBA today, and especially for 1 year. So, the Warriors get an easy 1 seed in the Western Conference. There's absolutely no doubt about that when you just look at all the skills. And honestly, they'll probably win the NBA Finals too, unless the Celtics or some other Eastern Conference team manages to sneak up and grab it. So this one's pretty interesting to me. The Dallas Mavericks are a team that doesn't really get talked about a ton because really there's nothing to talk about. They have a bunch of pretty alright players, mostly guards, honestly. They also have Dirk, the legend, legendary power forward, so innovative, the best foreign player of all time, no doubt. And they got one free agent, and that free agent is once again on a 1-year deal, but it's gonna really propel the Mavs into potentially a playoff spot. DeAndre Jordan was gotten from the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Clippers kind of fell apart last year after trading away Blake Griffin and Chris Paul leaving for the Rockets, and now DeAndre Jordan leaving for the Mavericks. And DeAndre Jordan is a solid, great defensive player, and he can also get offense, but don't expect him to hit free throws. The likely starting five is either going to be Dennis Smith Jr. or Luka Doncic, who, just got drafted. Because Doncic is so gifted in the fact that he's already won a lot with Real Madrid, and they have pretty similar stat lines. But it's hard to say what Doncic will be able to do because of the fact that he hasn't played in an NBA game. So I'm going to say Dennis Smith Jr. for now. 15.2 points, 5.2 assists, 3.8 rebounds, pretty solid. Then they have Wesley Matthews, who former Trailblazer, deadeye from long range, and he can get buckets just from three, and he's really the guy that they kind of have to rely on in terms of that. 12.9 points, 2.7 assists, 3.1 rebounds. They have Harrison Barnes, former Warrior, who's doing pretty well for them, is really being the main guy for them. 18.9 points, that's more than anybody else on the Mavericks. 6.1 rebounds. And of course you have Dirk Nowitzki. He's essential for them. 12 points, 5.7 rebounds. Still doing it at the age of 42. So, you got to respect that. NBA legend. And now DeAndre Jordan picking up 15.2 rebounds a game. I think it's not a bad accusation. I give it like a B-. It's like a solid power forward. That's all they need. A solid power forward. And you could put Doncic at shooting guard potentially, or Dennis Smith Jr. maybe, and put Wesley Matthews at small forward, move Harrison Barnes to power forward, and keep DeAndre Jordan. That's a lot. That's a lot. And it's tough to say whether that could work, and maybe it could, but no clear power forward at the moment is kind of annoying because that makes a mandatory rotation of Dennis Smith Jr. and Luka Doncic at the moment, and that can make for an awkward lineup because all those guys need to eat up minutes because all those guys are pretty solid, and it's going to be tough to figure out, especially for management, but if they are able to do it, then they might be able to be a sneaky team like the Utah Jazz were last year, and they'll probably only have DeAndre Jordan for the 1 year, but we'll see how this year goes, and maybe I could be wrong. Now, this one's really interesting to me because it's on the Eastern Conference, and nobody's really expecting these guys to really break through, but I think with the people they've acquired, they really have a shot at the Eastern Conference in general. Like, they have a chance of winning the entire thing, and that would be the Wizards. The Wizards. And they traded for Austin Rivers with the Clippers, who we'll talk about here in a second. For Austin Rivers, they traded Marcin Gortat. They also got Dwight Howard from the Nets. He was on the Nets for not a single game. He was picked up by the Nets, and then he was like, I don't want to be on the Nets. And so he went to Washington. And then Jeff Green was gotten from the Cavs just as a free agent, and Jeff Green's a really solid player. I love Jeff. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the NBA, and I think that he can really go out and prove himself. Now, I don't like Austin Rivers, but Austin Rivers is a pretty alright player. And I don't like Austin Rivers as a person. His personality, I just don't like it. I wouldn't trade for him, but he's a solid backup. And this starting five really makes me think, okay, yeah, this team can work. At point guard, you have John Wall, the star, 19.4 points, 9.6 assists, just great numbers. Bradley Beal, shooting guard, 22.6 points, 4.5 assists, 4.4 rebounds. That's like a triple-double machine in the making, Otto Porter at small forward, 14.7 points, 6.4 rebounds. And then this one's a little interesting. Jeff Green / Markieff Morris. Both are pretty good. But Markieff Morris picks up slightly more points and slightly more rebounds than Jeff Green, and in general gets more points, but that's because Jeff Green was coming off the bench for the majority of the year with the Cavs last year. So it'll really be interesting to see, who will get that starting spot, if either of them. It's hard to say. And Dwight Howard at center now with Marcin Gortat going to the Clippers, 16.6 points, 12.5 rebounds. He's a guy that the Wizards really need if they want to stay in contention. And it's honestly not even that easy to grade this, because Dwight Howard and Jeff Green can both be really streaky players. Last year, Dwight Howard was kind of a shell of his former self, but some games he just totally looked like the 2010 defensive, all NBA player that he was with the Orlando Magic. And Jeff Green sometimes looks like, God. He looks like a better LeBron James sometimes. Other times he's just okay. It's hard to say, really, who we'll get for the majority of the time. We'll never get one for the entire time, and Austin Rivers is pretty good. Kelly Oubre Jr., I think he's going to be great someday, and honestly, he can play that power forward position if the Wizards really need him to. He is solid, and I think just with all those assets, the Wizards can come out of the East and compete with Boston and Philadelphia and Toronto and the Bucks and all those teams. I think that they're just as good. Maybe a little worse, but they still have the star power. Now, I promised that we would get to the Clippers, so here we are, talking about the Clippers. Of course, as I just mentioned, they got Marcin Gortat. They also got Mike Scott from the Wizards, also, but that one was just more coincidental. And they got Luce Baumute, who's a shooting guard who was with the Rockets last year, and he's a pretty good backup. The thing that the Clippers really need, and I'll just say it now, is they need to re-sign people. They've re-signed almost everybody. I'm really impressed by that. They re-signed Avery Bradley. I didn't think they'd have a chance to re-sign Avery Bradley, but I guess he just loves it here in Los Angeles, not with the Lakers. So this is the likely starting five I see, and keep in mind, this is all speculation. Nothing is really, bare bones like this is going to happen. But point guard is actually the toughest position to say because they need to re-sign Milos Teodosic, and he's really a huge deal for them. They just need a point guard because Lou Williams can't really do a point guard, and that neither are any of the other players. And they also, if they can, re-sign Patrick Beverley, who played for them last year. But that doesn't seem as likely because I think Patrick Beverley doesn't want to be there. That's just what I saw during the NBA season. Maybe he resigns. That's what I thought about Avery Bradley, but here we are. Avery Bradley re-signed for a few more years, and I guess we'll see. But Milos Teodosic, I'm just going to say he resigns, and he's back on the Clippers. 9.5 points, 4.6 assists, 2.8 rebounds. He's still young. He'll get better. Lou Williams, though. I love Lou Williams. He's one of my favorite players. He's been underrated for so long, and now people understand why he's great. 22.6 points, 5.3 assists, 2.5 rebounds, and he's just so good. And then at small forward and power forward, we got a few interesting propositions. Avery Bradley is probably going to start at small forward. 14.3 assists, 2.0 assists, 2.5 rebounds, but power forward is really interesting because these two players are very similar in many aspects, that being Tobias Harris and Danilo Gallinari. Tobias Harris is 18.6 points, 2.4 assists, 5.5 rebounds. Gallinari has 15.3 points, 2.0 assists, and 4.8 rebounds. So Tobias Harris is slightly better, but Gallinari has still been a very solid player. He used to play for the Nuggets. He was really good. And then Marcin Gortat, 8.4 points, 1.8 assists, and 7.6 rebounds. So overall, I'd have to give this a B. I mean, if they are able to re-sign Milos and maybe Patrick Beverley, then I'd give it like an A-. But the thing is, they just look solid, and I think that they can do a lot. I think they can really do a lot with this team, and I think that they can also maybe be able to get into the playoffs. It's hard to say. They were almost there last time. They finished as the 10 seed, over 500, just behind the Nuggets and the Timberwolves, and I thought that they looked good. And when those three forwards, somebody is going to have to sit on the bench, and all of them are so good, so it's really tough to say which one. But I think that if they are able to re-sign all these people, and Milos and Tobias Harris are able to get back together, who have amazing chemistry, they'll just be great. And my final one for now, is the Pelicans. And the Pelicans look like a really fun team. They got Julius Randle from the Lakers, and they got Elfrid Payton from the Suns. Julius Randle had a really interesting time because he was like, I don't want to be in Los Angeles anymore. And then LeBron signed. He was like, actually, I'm just kidding about that whole thing. I didn't really mean that I didn't want to be here. I mean, Will you let me back? And the Lakers were like, no. And so now he's on the Pelicans. And I think that the starting five is going to be really fun. I just think it looks great. Um, at point guard, it's probably going to be Alfred Payton. 12.7 points, 6.2 assists, 4.3 rebounds. 4.3 rebounds for a guy who's just only a point guard is pretty impressive, honestly. And I don't love Alfred Payton, but he's going to be good for the Pelicans because the Pelicans, they love Drew Holiday, and Drew Holiday is great at assists, and Alfred Payton is even better. And speaking of Drew Holiday, he has 19.0 points, 6.0 assists, and 4.5 rebounds, and I think he'll be the shooting guard. And I don't like saying that because Drew Holiday is great at running the offense, but I think that Drew Holiday is more experienced with shooting guard, and I think if you want to get both on the court at the same time, that's kind of a necessary evil. At small forward is Nikola Mirotic, 15.6 points, 1.5 assists, 7.4 rebounds. Then Julius Randle. Julius Randle is a great fit because he almost replaces DeMarcus Cousins in a way. Not to the same level, but Julius Randle is still young and looks great. And I have to say that Julius Randle, while not being on the same level as DeMarcus Cousins, him and Alfred Payton being together kind of make the Pelicans a more dynamic offense, quite frankly. And Trayvon Blewett, former Xavier player, don't look now, but in the Summer League, he's doing absolutely awesome. And if he continues to do awesome, who knows? He might be, something good in the NBA. But in any case, Julius Randle, 16.1 points, 2.6 assists, 8.0 rebounds, pretty good. And of course, Anthony Davis at center, 28.1 points, 2.3 assists, 11.1 rebounds. I have to give this an A. The Pelicans are so solid, I just have to see them as a team that goes to the playoffs, and I really hope so, because this team excites me. I'm excited to see this team. They're all young, they're all good. I mean, I think that this team can be good if they keep everybody for the next few years. The oldest guy is Nikola Mirotic, and he's only 29. I mean, that's not that old for a player who's starting, You see older players start right now. I mean, Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, he's not starting for the Kings, but geez, man, he's up there in the years. He's going into his age 45 season, I think, and, he's a legend, no doubt. But I think that they're just going to look really good, and I think they can be a 6th seed in the Western Conference or higher. It really does depend. And speaking of depending, I'm just going to talk really quick about the teams that I think are locks, and locks for the postseason. So the teams in the Western Conference I think are locks are the Warriors, obviously. The Thunder, because Russell Westbrook has been a beast, and they get Paul George back, and they're getting rid of Carmelo Anthony, which is honestly a plus. The Rockets, they've lost quite a few players, but they still have James Harden and Chris Paul. And even if they don't get Clint Capella back, he's an important part of the offense, but it's not like it's going to ruin them. And the Trailblazers, because they didn't lose anybody, they only gained somebody, and they gained Seth Curry. He's a pretty solid player. He's not that great, but he's pretty fine. Teams that have a good shot. The Jazz, they're keeping everybody, and, Donovan Mitchell only getting better. Rudy Gobert, he's getting better. The Pelicans, I talked about. The Timberwolves, they're keeping everybody. Hopefully. We'll see about Jimmy Butler. He doesn't really seem like he wants to be there anymore, but we'll have to see. The Clippers talked about the Nuggets. They keep everybody, which is absolutely phenomenal because that team looks so great too, and they barely missed out last season. Teams that are good, but it's hard to see how good they will be. The Spurs lost Tony Parker, and they're probably going to lose Kawhi Leonard, but they still have LaMarcus Aldridge, and LaMarcus Aldridge did great for them last year, and LaMarcus Aldridge is a player that I think is criminally underrated, so that'll be interesting to see. The Lakers, they have LeBron, nobody else. I don't really get it. Mavericks, I already touched on. Suns, their team is all young. Devin Booker is great. They have DeAndre Ayton. They have Mikal Bridges. They have all these great guys. But how will that translate on the NBA court because of so little experience with the actual NBA? That's what interests me. And the teams that aren't going to be good. The Kings and the Grizzlies. That's just how it's going to be. In the Eastern Conference, for the teams that I think will no doubt make it, I think it's going to be the top 3 teams of last year. The Celtics, the Raptors, and the 76ers. They have lost nothing. All 3 of those teams. So, judging by how they did last year, I don't think that's going to change. And the teams that have a solid shot, I think that'll be the Pacers. The Pacers gained a lot of people. I didn't talk about it, but they gained Tyreek Evans, they gained Kyle O'Quinn, and their players are also just getting better. You know, you saw Oladipo do amazing last year, and I think he's going to stay on the same path. I mean, he just looks phenomenal. Also, the Bucks, they're also getting better. Giannis is only getting better, and I think they're going to stay at the same spot, which means they're probably going to get in. And the Wizards I already talked about. Mediocre and might sneak in. The Heat, the Pistons, and the Hornets. The Heat, they have Dragic, they have Whiteside. They're pretty good. They stayed the same, and, you know, that's probably a good thing. But same with the Pistons, and they have Drummond and Blake Griffin. They stayed the exact same, and they still have the exact same problems with the guard position, and that's what really worries me about them, and I hope that they're able to get better. And the Hornets, Kemba Walker. I love Kemba Walker. He's great. And the Hornets are a mediocre team and have been for the past few seasons, and I hope they sneak in, but it's hard to say. Teams that might be okay, but it's hard to say now. The Magic, they have Mo Bamba, and Mo Bamba looks great. I love Mo Bamba. And Isaiah Thomas might sign with the Magic. It's hard to say. There's a lot of questions there. And the Nets. The Nets are low-key good. And I know I said, okay, they might be okay, but I think in a few years, they are going to be good. They have Spencer Dinwiddie, and I think Spencer Dinwiddie is a talent, and I think he's good. DeMar Carroll is a solid player, and really, I just think, okay, you know, this team, okay. Jared Allen, he's also good. I think this team will be good in, 3 years. They're going to be okay now, but later, after a few good draft picks, they're going to be great. And then the bad teams, the Knicks, the Bulls, the Hawks, they have Trae Young. That's not going to do anything for them. And with that, I think that'll do it for this week's edition of the Payoff Pitch. Make sure to check us out on TuneIn Radio, and make sure to check us out on YouTube also at Clark Montessori. And follow us on Twitter at Soko Club. And from me, Joey Olberding, I hope you'll stay tuned at 95.7 MRC for Payoff Pitch and so much more.